Hello friends, welcome to my August reading wrap up. Couple orders of business, even though we really need to jump in because I read 18 freaking books, I think. But our cord broke for my microphone, so I have to hold this until we get a new cord. It's fine. Second thing, I would really like, if you are, maybe a semi-consistent watcher of me, or if you watch a lot of BookTube and you have advice for me, I just want some feedback about how I do these reading wrap-ups. I'm a verbose person. It's very difficult for me to be concise, and I feel like sometimes these end up being maybe a little long for people, so I'm just curious to know what anyone thinks. If you want to give me constructive criticism, I would greatly appreciate it, because like I've said in a couple videos prior, I'm just not thrilled with the format of reading wrap-ups in general recently, so just any advice at all about how that could improve or whatever, I would very much appreciate. But like I said, August was my biggest reading month. I think there's 18 books, or 17 or 18. That is because I had a small surgery. And as I was recovering, I listened to many, many books. So starting off, I read a new release, Nosy Neighbors by Freya Sampson. If you know me, if you know this channel, pause, sorry. I'm Nova. This is Off My Rocker Reading. Kudos to me for remembering, finally. Yeah, so I read Nosy Neighbors by Freya Sampson. If you've been around this channel at all, you know that I love books with old people. I love murder mysteries. I love cozy books. I love a book that conglomerates all of those things together, and that's really what we had here. It's about an old historic building and a crotchety elderly woman who lives there, and a little cast of characters of other people who live in this building, including an older man who has a tenuous relationship with that older lady and rents out a room to a young woman. She's kind of transient-y vibes, like she's never really found a home base. She's never gotten close to anybody, and it's because of her very tumultuous childhood. That old man gets attacked right after they receive the news that they're being kind of wrongfully convicted, and after he has tried to rally to stop that from happening. And it's just, again, a cozy kind of feel-good little coming together of these various characters and just them forming relationships and friendships and finding community. It was pretty light. The only criticism that I had of it personally is like the old lady and the girl, not the girl, she's a woman, but like they start to like work together to try to figure this stuff out. But bro, they fight like towards the end. They go at each other's throats, and it was like so like mean from the both of them that I was like, wow, like you got like, this is wow, like I can't believe you said that to another person that you already had such a tenuous bond with. So it kind of changed my perception of some of the characters that we're supposed to be like rooting for. It was just like a little too harsh. It was like too much. And it was really hard for me to believe that these two people that have only been friends really reluctantly in the first place for like 3 months would be able to like reconcile after a fight that terrible. So that was my one criticism of it. Other than that, it was a breeze. I did really like this. And I would recommend it for sure if you're into this kind of thing like I am. I rated it 4 stars. After that, I caved and listened to Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. I was not going to listen to this or read this. I ended up listening to it just because I've heard pretty negative things about it, but it was like short, so I was like, whatever, I'm gonna give it a go. And man, come on, I was so disappointed. And like, right, like I knew what I was getting into, but like, it still was like, wow, like you really chose the most predictable outcome for this story. It's a story about 3 siblings who are kind of estranged, kind of, it's just weird vibes, who have to come back to their childhood home after their mother passes away. Their father left them, abandoned them years ago, and they just start to uncover some pretty gnarly secrets about their parents and crimes that their parents were maybe sort of kind of involved with. the discussion surrounding like the family bonds and like just the kind of heavy stuff that these characters were dealing with, it was so good. So it really almost felt to me like this shouldn't have even been like a thriller murder book, because there was enough substance just in the family bond stuff that this author wanted to unpack. So when the story concludes with a really, really predictable, tropey, of course it was that freaking guy, ending, it's just really disappointing and really fruitless to me. I don't really understand what the point was then, you know? If you're talking about like familial healing and all of this stuff, just to end up villainizing the character that they villainize. I don't know. I don't want to spoil it. Whatever. I gave it 3 stars. It's skippable, I would say. Ooh. After that, I read what I can easily dub as the strangest, weirdest book that I've read this entire year, which is saying something, because I've read like Milk Fed this year, I've read Paradise Rot this year. This is a very different vibe from those things, but it was weird. And you might not expect this book to be weird, because I was not expecting it to be weird. I read Toward Eternity by Anton Herr. I don't know how to say that. This is a sci-fi book. I was really excited for it because I just love sci-fi. I believe it came out this year. I love sci-fi. I barely really knew what the premise was, but once you dig into this book, wow, it is so much more than science fiction. It is a deeply philosophical book. It is not difficult to read. The prose is not difficult to read, but it is difficult in concept of like the thinking that you need to do to understand what's going on in this book. Like, you have to be like using your brain, because it's just, again, very philosophical. It's not just science fiction, technology. It's about memory and humanity and poetry, and it just deals with AI, and it deals with cloning and these things, and it's almost like a pondering on what those concepts could look like if they are harnessed by corporate greed and corruption. It was great. It was very good, but it was very weird, and I don't think that this book is going to have a very broad target audience, which is not a bad thing. But yeah, it was not what I was expecting in any way, shape, or form, but in a pleasant way, in a positive way. Just very much exceeded my expectations. So I would recommend if any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, and I gave that 4 stars. After that, I read this very short book that I saw at Barnes & Noble. I listened to it. It's called Terrace Story by Hilary Leichter. It was odd. It was a kind of a surrealist novel. There's like magical or like fantasy elements, but put in like very like real world settings, like just like these people can do these things, or this is happening to these people, and like there's no explanation for it. It's very surreal and strange. I liked it. It wasn't necessarily greatly impactful in any way. It's a couple different stories, but they end up kind of like interweaving, and this person is in this and that, like, you get it. For it being such a short book, I would say, like, why not read it, honestly? It wasn't super impactful or meaningful to me in any way. It's not like something that's like, I have to have this, or like it's like going to leave some kind of lasting mark, but I definitely do not regret reading it at all. I would say I gave it like 3.5 stars. I think I rated it 4 on Goodreads, but 3.5 stars is what I would say. Yeah, a little weird one. If you've read that, let me know what you thought of it, because it's just odd. Oh man, controversial opinion incoming. I finally read a book that I have been putting off and putting off and putting off. A book that I have been putting off despite the extremely high praise that it gets from most other people, even people that I know. I was expecting to just absolutely love it. And so when I cracked into it, I was very confused and a little bit underwhelmed, personally. That is, unfortunately, Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. This is a very short book about a relationship between two young Black people. They live in the UK. And it's very, very lyrically written. It is not plot driven or anything. It's just there. You're there for the vibes, really. And I don't know if it's just I put it off for too long and I heard too many other high praises and thoughts from other people and it influenced how I thought I was going to feel about this book. It just really did not meet my expectations, personally. It was not bad by any means. I gave it 3 stars. I just was not blown out of the water like I feel like I was expecting to be. For me, a couple issues that I had with it. One, I am all for lyrical writing. I actually love that. So I'm not somebody that is a hater of that. But personally, for me, in this instance, I found that lyrical writing to verge into overwriting too much of the time. There were sentences and parts of it that just ended up reading as very clunky to me because it was in an effort to be so lyrical and poetic in the prose that it ended up actually feeling quite awkward and again, like clunky. I really wish I forgot to screenshot. I actually highlighted a specific sentence in the book as an example of this. I think I'm just gonna like paraphrase it because I do remember the exact words of at least the last part of the sentence, which is the part that I would have adjusted. But it's like he's talking about how it's so hot out and it's like, despite wearing a sleeveless jersey, the sweat still pours from your own pores. And I highlighted that because I was like, your own pore as opposed to whose? Like, first of all, you could have just taken own right out of that sentence because as opposed to whose pores, like it's obviously your pores, you know? And it just makes it long and awkward. And then the pores, it's just clunky, like as you're reading it. And I was not a huge fan because of that. It was taking me out of the story. The second thing that I will say though, is that I actually felt like the writing got better the farther along I went in the book, but the plot got a lot worse, in my opinion. I was under the impression that this was a story that was kind of like these people like interweave into each other's lives. It's over like a long period of time and they kind of fall apart and then come back together and all this stuff. And I really did not feel like it was like that at all. I felt like they were together, not at the end of the book. To be honest, once they were not together, I was really struggling to be interested because this author does something that is a personal pet peeve of mine. I totally get that art, like the art of writing, is influenced by other things, and maybe you want to incorporate talking about this album or this painting into your story or this movie, right? I totally get that. If it like fits with the theme of like your book or whatever, I get it. But when you are just writing about your thoughts about all these different, like he talks about art and music multiple times and a movie at one point, and I'm like, this is for me too much. I'm really just like not super interested in what you thought of this movie or whatever. And when it's like the 6th thing that you're writing about that doesn't relate to the plot, I get kind of like annoyed. That's just something that I really don't like. And again, at the end of the book, like it was just kind of that multiple times, and I was really like, I'm not interested in this anymore. He's definitely an author that I will give another chance to, and I know that that is a controversial opinion. This is a pretty loved book overall, so you know, whatever. It's just my opinion. Oh God. After that, I listened to another thing that I just saw at Barnes & Noble. It is A Daughter of Fair Verona, #1, because it's apparently going to be a series, and it's by Christina Dodd. This is a lighthearted murder mystery, but the twist in this case is that it is set in Romeo and Juliet times, and it is the daughter of Romeo and Juliet that is the main character. This book is, because of that, extremely facetious. It has to be, because you're talking about, you know, this time period where it's, you know, it's very misogynistic, it's very It's just weird when, you know, this is the daughter that Juliet bore at like whatever, like 14 or something. Like it is a little, you just really have to take it with a grain of salt. And I found that I just didn't want to do that. It just kind of annoyed me more than anything to have to do that. And additionally, you know, this author tries to be funny and incorporate, well, it tries to be funny, period. But then in addition to that, incorporates a lot of fart jokes into this novel. I understand why, because that is something that Shakespeare would do in his own writing. I get it. Just personally for me, I do not find that funny. I'm gonna roll my eyes every freaking time. That's not funny to me. So it just really did not speak to me in the way that other books like this usually do. It also ends on a cliffhanger. Like, they're really trying to get you to read the next book, and I am not going to. So I gave it 3 stars. It was what it was, you know, whatever. After that, I read something that I have highly anticipated because I love a cozy fantasy. So I listened to The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, and it was great. It was great. It's just a cottagecore fantasy, super cozy. I think it is categorized like as a romantasy. This librarian at this like great library has to flee because there are like rebels taking it over, or like protests or something. Just to flee with her little sidekick that's a sentient plant, and they go live on this island where she lived as a kid, and just, you know, meet people, and she falls in love with someone, and it's really just that. Like, it's very wholesome. It's just a feel-good time. I would definitely recommend. It was very cute. That's really all I have to say about it, though. I feel like not too much you can say. I liked the world. I liked it. I liked the vibes. It was, you know, it was a thumbs up for me. So that's it. Ooh, after I read that, or I listened to that, I read The Nude by C. Michelle Lindley. I cannot believe that the like hot girl book girlies have not found this book. It is so reminiscent of just other books that I see online in these like aesthetic bookstagram posts. Like, it would just fit in so perfectly. It's about a woman who is an art historian, and she goes to Greece to maybe purchase a statue for her museum, a statue that was dredged up by some fishermen. And it's just about kind of the politics of the art world and how she's compromising herself by being a part of it. It's about just her kind of sad, bleak life. It's just very, her as a heroine, as a protagonist, just reminds me so much of other women protagonists that I feel like a lot of people like and resonate with. She's like addicted to painkillers. She just like it's just such a specific vibe. And I hope that the demographic that would like it finds it, because I really believe that they would love it. And it's also just about her kind of love affair with this couple as she's there. It was very good. It was very vibey. It's a great like end of summer read. It definitely feels like summer, I would say. So I would say like read it now if you read like seasonally. So I caved. I caved and listened to God of the Woods by Liz Moore. It's just getting so much hype. I felt like I had to listen to it because I love thrillers. I listened to a lot of them. Unfortunately, I think because I listened to a lot of them, I was not as impressed by this as other people who maybe don't read this genre as much. I liked it. Like, it was solid. I get it. I get why like people like it. I just don't really think it's that distinguishable from other things personally. I mean, it's very well written. Like, in terms of thrillers, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not equating this with something like The Housemaid. Okay, like it is very well written. It's very intricate. There's a lot of different details that go into it, and it's good because of that. I just wasn't personally like mind blown or anything, and that's okay. It's very good. I gave it 4 stars. I get the hype, and I'm glad that I listened to it ultimately, just because, you know, a lot of people liked it. Yeah, I'm sure this is not any new information to you. You've probably heard of this book at this point. You might have even read it at this point, so, you know, it's fine. But that's just how I felt about it. I read this very strange little book next. It's called Treacle Walker by Alan Garner. This book was very weird. It utilizes a lot of kind of like nonsense language in the writing. So if you don't like that, I don't think you would like this, but I liked it personally. I like stuff like this. It's not mind blowing. It didn't like blow me away or anything, but it's just about a young boy and his interactions with this kind of strange figure, treacle walker. And it's just like kind of myth and folklore and fairy tale and just like odd things happen to him. And it's very, very short. It's more like a piece than anything. It's not really like a novel. And it was good. I don't know if you like that. I feel like that's very niche. So I understand if you're watching this and you're like, I am not interested in that at all. That is very okay. But, you know, I don't know. If you feel middling about it, then maybe pick it up because it is super short. I listened to this audiobook next. It is a little kind of contemporary romance book. It's called You Are Here by David Nichols. I don't listen to stuff like this a lot or read stuff like this a lot. It was kind of, I really don't even know why I read this or where it came from. Maybe I saw it at Barnes & Noble. I don't know. But listen, if you are one of those people that really like funny, witty banter, this is the book for you, dude. Like, I'm so serious. Like, this has some of the best like banter and easy, like realistic conversation I've ever read in a book. It's very good. I mean, it's rated very well, and that is very fair. It's just about these two divorced people coming together and finding companionship in each other when they go on this walking trip together. They're like set up by like these friends, and it's just like this whole thing, but then they end up kind of being alone, and it's very sweet. It's a very sweet book. I liked it a lot, and again, the banter, so good. Some of the best banter I've ever read. If you're into that vibe, go for it. It was solid. I finally read this. It's been on my radar for a while. It's a type of book that I would really like. It is The Guest by Emma Cline. I read Emma Cline's The Girls, and it was really good. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. I totally get why people don't like this one as much. It's about a girl who is also, she's kind of a grifter. She just kind of tries to ingratiate herself with maybe wealthy men, and she pickpockets things, and she swipes stuff from people's houses. She's just trying to kind of ingratiate herself into this world of like wealth and privilege and everything, but just doing it by like riding on everybody's like coattails and just kind of, again, like grifting her way into it. And she's doing this partially because this is just what she's always done, but also partially because she is trying to get away from some trouble that she left back in the city. And I know exactly why people don't like this book. And it's because they're expecting this to be a plot-driven book. They're expecting us to find out the story behind these secrets and what she left behind and what's gonna happen. We're expecting to find out like actual like substantial information about this character. We're expecting the plot to go somewhere very like wrap it up in a tidy bow. That's just not what happens. I don't really think it's the purpose of this book. And I totally understand why, if you're going into this thinking that that's what you're getting and wanting it to be like that, why this would then be disappointing. I personally just had no expectations, so I felt very positively toward it. I gave it 4 stars, and I really think the purpose of this book more is for you to just kind of live inside of her head and have to sit in her head and like get herself into these different situations and like just pretend to be a part of this group so she can stay with these people for the night, pretend to, you know, have a membership at this club so she can get in there and like get free food. You're really supposed to feel the things that she's feeling. It's very visceral in the sense that I feel like I was there. I feel like I was at that club, just like the sand and the sun and everything, and her being tired and hot because she had to sleep outside one night. Like, you're really just supposed to be there in the vibe with her. And I think that if you're going into it with that mindset, it's really good. And I just felt like it went in some pretty clever directions for the fact that it's just us being there with her for this like week, you know. I felt positively about it. I understand that other people might not, but I would personally recommend this. So there you go. Oh, another book that I finally caved and read. This is another one that's been on my radar for a really long time because it's so like loved and hyped and everything. And again, maybe just because of my expectations for it at that point, I just kind of felt like, okay, this is good. But I just personally wasn't like insanely impacted by it or anything. And that's okay. It's still good, right? If this was life-changing for you, slay. I love that for you. Personally, for me, I just felt like, oh, okay, this is good. But that's The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. Yeah. It's a time travel-y book. It's cool. It's twisty. It's odd. It's, you know, it's like magical fantasy realism kinda, but it's got like kind of this like murder mystery element to it, and it's her trying to figure out her just kind of place in the world and why she's been dealt the hand of cards that she's been dealt after her grandma passes, and she ends up finding out some pretty crazy freaking things. And yeah, I mean, it was really good. It just, I think really for me, what could have brought it up to being like a much higher level for me was I just really was expecting kind of a gut punch at the end. Like, I was expecting an ending that was going to like wreck me emotionally. So when it kind of, again, wrapped up in like a nice tidy little bow and like it's all happy ending, like for me personally, like I just needed a little more tension or something. Like I needed something. So that was my like only like legitimate like criticism, but other than that, I think it was really good. Actually, just kidding. A tiny other little criticism for me personally is I really like in books like this that element of suspense and mystery, like what is going on. And I think it's just this author's particular writing style that is very like passive almost and takes out a lot of that sense of like suspense and urgency and everything. I just didn't feel that with this, and I really wanted to. Yeah, so those were just my like little minimal things that I felt about it. Again, it's still very good. I'm glad I read it. I get it now, you know. The next book I'm not going to say too much about because I am actually giving you a little bonus video this month. I just feel the need in my soul to talk about this book and talk about some of the negative reactions that I'm seeing to this book because I do not think that they are fair. If you know me in this channel, you also know that I love memoirs, so I was very, very excited to get my hands on Men Have Called Her Crazy by Anna Marie Tendler. I have followed her for actually years at this point, and I, again, was just very excited for this. And I personally really liked this. I resonated deeply with a lot of the content in this book. And I do think that that is part of why I feel more positively than maybe other people do. But this is also just, I think, a really solid memoir for her being a relatively young person writing a memoir. And again, I am going to have a video kind of in defense of her because I'm seeing some takes that I don't love from other people. I've got three more. A short story collection, Every Drop is a Man's Nightmare. I'm going to butcher her name. I'm so sorry. By Megan Kamale Kakimoto. I'm sorry. This was great. I loved it. It's a short story collection, mostly about women, you know, women's experiences, about this author exploring Hawaiian identity and Japanese identity. These stories are very visceral and bleak, not in a bad way at all. I love that. So I really like this. The word that I would use for this is bleak. I think the entire book feels bleak, and that's a-okay for me. So there were, definitely kind of like in any short story collection, there were a couple that like didn't stick out to me quite as much as other things, but these are just a really cool exploration of womanhood and the perception of women and just grappling with identity and weight and like all of these different things. And it just was very, very interesting. And I was a huge fan. I loved all of the like Hawaiian folklore and folktales that were thrown into this. I loved looking stuff up and like learning things as I was going along. It was just very cool. So I would definitely recommend it. And after that, I read one of my very anticipated books for this year because I loved Claire Oshetsky's other book, Chouette. That book is such a slay. This one I also really, really liked. I didn't like it quite as much, but I still felt like this was very good. It is called Poor Dear. It is about a young woman giving this confessional account of this very, very heavy thing that happened to her when she was young. She was kind of the cause of one of her friends passing away when she was only 4 years old. And it's something that has weighed on her so heavily and influenced so many of the aspects of her life that she has this imaginary little deer that manifests for a specific reason, which you learn as you're reading the book. But it's a little deer that's dressed up a certain way. Again, you get it when you read the book, but it just hounds her with this like guilt and just these vitriolic statements and negative thoughts and everything. And it just follows her around until the writing of this account, which that poor deer has like kind of forced her to write down this account of everything that happened. And it's very like twisty because sometimes she would like write something and then poor deer would be like, oh, you're lying. Like, that's not how it went. Like, say how it really went, you know? And so we have to like kind of rewind and go back. It was really good. I think that the exploration of death, and especially tragic death through a child's eyes, was incredibly interesting and well done to me in this book. I think the way that adults struggle to explain death to young people and the way that young people then try to cope when they are not being informed, it was just very interesting and realistic to me. I was like, yeah, that probably is like how they would think about that, you know, in a very, you know, sad way. But I just thought it was really masterfully done. It really told the story that it wanted to tell and hit the topics of discussion that it wanted to hit in a very effective way. I think that this author is just such a clear communicator. You get it when you're reading it, and I love that. Yeah, and just kind of the overall theme of like learning to forgive yourself and finding acceptance and forgiveness in yourself is just so important. And it was very poignant. I felt like I was a fan. I am a fan of this author. I will continue to be a fan. This was really good. I probably will buy it. I probably will buy both of her books, actually. And last but not least, I'm so sorry to end on a very, very sour note, but a book that I actually kind of loathed at the end of the day is what I ended on for this month. I honestly wanted to, sitting here right now, I was like, can I just push this off and talk about it in September? But then it would change the number of books that I'm talking about. So whatever. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off and do it, dude. Listen, I know and I acknowledge that it's very hard to write a memoir, especially when it is a memoir that is mostly about grief, and especially when that grief came from something that was very tragic and unexpected. I want to acknowledge this author for having the drive to write this and share her story. And ultimately, you know, it's her story to tell, and she can tell it the way that she wants to tell it. I don't want to minimize that in any way. As somebody who loves memoirs, as somebody who's planning a video this month in defense of another memoir, I don't want to come across like I'm just hating because I am a hater and not because I'm really criticizing this in good faith. I am. I promise I am. I read The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards by Jessica Waite, and I really did not like it. It was one of the only times I have ever read a memoir and really felt like I disliked the person that was telling the story. That has only happened to me one other time. I'll find it actually and I'll put it on the screen, but it was a millennial couple writing this like memoir thing, and they just came off really insufferable. I actually do not mind saying that about that one because it wasn't really about anything like heavy or sad. They just, wow, I was not a fan. In this case though, this woman lost her husband very unexpectedly to a heart attack. It was very tragic, and the first part of it is her grappling with that event and the grief, but then slowly unpacking for us that her and her husband's relationship was very, very tenuous and tumultuous, mostly because of him. Listen, it was really hard for me as a young Gen Z person, especially a young Gen Z person who is a psychology student. Dude, there's just no easy way to say this, but it just was really, really hard for me to sit there and watch her try to justify and make so many a sense for this man's horrible behavior. I totally understand that there was like undiagnosed mental illness at play with some of the things that he did to her and their son. However, that just isn't an excuse. And at the end of the day, abuse is abuse. So to watch her just try to justify these different things over and over and over again, even to the point of the big twist of this book is her kind of getting into some kind of new agey spirituality sort of methods to try to like channel him and like connect with him. And like she just, a large part of it is her thinking that she's receiving signs. And if you believe in that, that's completely fine. But she is believing that she's receiving signs to say that he's like sorry for all of this and like he feels like regretful for all of this. And it feels a little convenient to take a sign that this man on the other side of this world is like regretful of all these things and he's so sorry. It's just, it's a little convenient to then not have to really grapple with the awful things that he did and hold him accountable for it. It just felt like over and over and over again, this woman is just trying to explain away this stuff. And that was really hard to read. It was just really hard to read. It was really hard to sit there and read that him going on the internet and watching for 6 hours and downloading that, filing it into all these different files and having this huge collection of reading the part where she's trying to blame it on the pop-up ads for preying on people who have like mental illness like this, and he would, these pop-up ads, and he would just get sucked into this thing. No, I'm so actually sorry. He's still responsible for his actions. He did not need to click on them in the first place, much less spend that much time on it, much less download it, much less save it, much less file it. Come on, man, come on. It's just, it makes me so actually sad for her. And I just was not a fan. And to be totally honest, it felt like so much trying to justify the horrible things that he would do and say to her, even like threatening violence in front of their son against her. It was really hard to read all of that and then read these multiple times where I hate to throw around the term internalized misogyny because I think that it is grossly overused, but instances where I genuinely believe like it is internalized misogyny, because the most anger that we see from her is when she basically harasses and sends a bunch of messages calling this woman this woman who her husband had an affair with, but she's not the only woman that he did that with. He was getting he was having other affairs, but mental illness. And then she sends these like nasty harassment messages to this woman and talks about it in this book as if it's something triumphant, this like moment of revenge that she got. And I was just like, oh my God, dude. And then literally opens up the next chapter and is talking about, my husband just loved bald eagles so much, and I got this sign from him because I saw these bald eagles. And I'm like, girl, you were just hurling nasty words at this woman who, made questionable choices, but was not the only party complicit in this relationship. And then next chapter is talking about her husband all lovey-dovey. Oh, it's amazing that she got this sign from him. I'm like, girl, put the blame where the blame is due. Stop trying to excuse it. And, later, kind of at the end of the book, she tries to like retouch on that whole situation with that woman and kind of be like, oh, I understand her more now and everything. But still, it just was very distasteful to me. I did not like it, dude. I was like, ew. Like, actually, ew. And then, sorry, this is the one last thing, really quickly. There's this one point where she's recounting this event in her childhood where her dad locked himself in their basement bathroom with hard liquor for like a week and just binge drank, and the mom didn't know what to do and the girls were in the house, and it was like the straw that broke the camel's back that like got them like out of the house and away from him or something. But she talks about how her mom's solution for the time being at that time was just to say, your father's very sick, like please do not go in the basement, he's very sick down there, to these like young girls. The only criticism that she makes of her parents in that situation is to particularly say that it was a poor handling of that situation by their mother. I'm so actually sorry. Huh? You're gonna condemn your mom for not like immediately getting you out of the house and not say a damn thing about this man who did this awful thing? Like, it's just stuff like that. I can't deal with it, dude. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to call her out. I'm sorry to like just feel so negatively about this, because a grief memoir is very personal and hard, and I get that. But I really hope for her that she can shift her thinking into putting the blame where the blame is actually due, and not directing so much of her anger at these women who were really accessories to this whole thing at the end of the day. You know, I just really didn't like it. And obviously I'm just reading her memoir. Maybe it's not really like this in her real life or whatever. I don't know. I can't speak on that, obviously. But just as far as the memoir goes, that's really how I felt. I'm sorry, dude. It was a rough one. I gave it 2.5 stars, and it really gave me the ick. But that is all I have for this month for a reading wrap up. I will be back with another one next month. But in the meantime, I have 2 videos that will be coming out this month. Let me know what you think about any of these books in the comments. I'd love to know if you've read any of these, or if you feel like adding any of these to your TBR. If you have a recommendation for me, absolutely throw that in the comments here. I would also love if you found my social media. I love interacting with people on Instagram, especially. It definitely spurs me to be posting on there and being on there more. So definitely find me on there. Thank you for sitting here with me. If you have been here with me this whole time, I am gonna go now and make dinner. So peace out. Bye.